short period of time, so we're all going to have to be very brief. The forum has chosen the title for this session, How Do We Avoid a Climate Recession? I'll start off very briefly by saying, in my opinion, I see a climate policy recession, but not a recession in the energy transition, because policy is controlled by governments, and too many governments are now, unfortunately, controlled by special interests. That may sound like a radical diagnosis, but it's actually the truth of what we're facing, because the fossil fuel industry is significantly better at capturing politicians than at capturing emissions, and they've worked at it very hard for more than a century. And so the policy has been a bit schizophrenic in some countries, including my own, unfortunately, with going forward in what I regard as the right direction, and then all of a sudden screeching on the brakes and trying to satisfy the fossil fuel industry by going back to the dirty fossil fuels. But in the real world, the advantages of renewable energy have become so obvious everywhere around the world, and the consequences of the climate crisis. Last year, 61% of the land mass of the entire Earth experienced at least 1 month of extreme drought. My country is in a rare winter drought right now. Massive fires in Chile this week, tens of thousands displaced. Worries in Australia about another Black Saturday event in southern Australia. And we've seen 300,000 people displaced from their homes 2 days ago in Mozambique. 3 days ago, 50,000 displaced in South Africa. In my country, we had 12 once-in-a-thousand-year downpours in a 3-day period last year, just shocking. In my home state, Tennessee, and even more in neighboring North Carolina and parts of Georgia, we had such a downpour that in 4 days there was as much rainfall as would fall over the largest waterfall in 2.5 years. It's been quite dramatic in the Los Angeles fires, and the list goes on. But on the technology, last year, if you look at all the new all of the new electricity generation installed worldwide, 93% of it was renewable. And the only thing coming down faster in price than solar panels is utility scale batteries, because the production's doubling every year. So we don't have a recession in the movement toward this energy transition, in my opinion, but we do appear in many countries, not all, a climate policy recession. So let's go around the room, and Minister Schneider, I'll go to you first. How do you see it?
I would agree. Well, I agree. It depends on the political decision-making process. Do you have support by your constituents or not? In Europe, we do. We've changed we passed a law in November to reduce our carbon emission by 90% to 2040. This is now the law. Voted in the European Parliament and the national governments. And in Germany, we are on track. I will propose our climate package for the next 5 years in 2 months, and I would be so close to fill the gap, to reduce it by 65% to 1990. It's, as you know, Germany, we have a stagnation economically, but not in the clean tech. Clean tech was increasing by 5% a year. And I would like to support this by regulatory framework. And last thing, I would add, coming back to democracies, you need the voters in favor of that. That's a question of distribution. Who pays the bill? Who pays the bill for the energy? Who pays the bill, especially for implementing the policies? And I changed the politics a bit, not the elite 10% gets the subsidies, the upper 50% gets the subsidies. For instance, if you buy an electric car, I introduced a new program on Monday that you could get up to 6,000 euro if you have below 40,000 euro. That means having the decision to drive an electric car is not only from a moral point of view, or even from a social distinctive point of view, driving a Tesla, which is not very popular in Germany right now. Well, you have to know what to do. But it's a reasonable question, and so I'm a social democrat. I always look at the distributional questions too. Maybe it was too less in the last years on the climate issue.
Well, thank you very much. Ester Baiget from the private sector, Novanisas, and you are co-chair of the World Economic Forum's Climate Leaders Alliance.
Yeah.
How do you see this question?
I see the need of pausing, the value of pausing and decoupling noise from facts. Mm-hmm. And I would encourage each of us to bring a narrative that shows truly what's happening now, a narrative of hope, a narrative that brings real facts that are happening today. Today, the green economy is already a 5 trillion economy, and it's growing twice as fast as the revenues of the past. Mm-hmm. It is competitive. It is replacing. It is bringing resilience. It is bringing optionality. We have to move from a confrontation to a transition, to an evolution, faster to the future, with solutions that they already exist and are already competitive. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the CEO Climate Alliance. It's a group of a little bit more than 100 CEOs where collectively represent like $4 trillion and more than 12 million employees. We have in the last years reduced more than 10% the CO2 emissions and at the same time increased the revenue 20%. Huh. This dilemma of climate and prosperity, it's not there. Business smart is climate smart. Long-term business success, it is in respect with the planet. They're two sides of the same coin. And we just have to share that and show that we are moving faster to that future. Of course, we say thank you to the past, which is fossil. We say thank you. We keep moving on, and we embrace the answers of the future. Yeah. I am privileged to be part of a company, Novanisas, who are a stronger enabler of those answers of the future. We bring enzymes, microbes, protein solutions that they transform the way that we produce and the food that we eat healthier. Decoupling fossil, bringing biofuels, bringing alternatives to fertilizers, changing the foods that we eat, replacing non-wanted goods, increasing yields, efficiencies, all that with solutions that they are in respect with the planetary boundaries, competitively also. And most importantly, creating jobs.
Yes.
Let's not forget that the solutions of the future, they are homegrown solutions based on local jobs, that they drive resilience, wealth, and on top, they're in respect with the planet. So I think we have a narrative crisis because we have not explained it, that it's not only about the climate. It is about growth, it's about prosperity, it's about resilience, and that those solutions are already competitive and that they exist.
Yeah, the Oxford Policy Review has a very well-respected peer-reviewed study from some years ago showing that there are 3 times as many jobs created for each dollar spent in the renewable economy compared to the fossil economy. Jai Shroff, you focus on the agriculture sector. How do you see this?
Yeah, no, I think it's a very exciting time, and we feel that companies like us are investing in technology to improve farmer resilience, and the outcome of farmer resilience is really water management, soil management, and those sort of things which really impact the farmers' lives in stressful condition, heat stress, etc. And I'm so happy the minister talked about rewarding EV car buyers. But what is an opportunity for the world is to reward farmers, right? So today, 25% of greenhouse gases is from agriculture, but we do not have manage or executable system to reward farmers. Now, we believe that every farmer can reduce 5%, improve his efficiency on carbon by 5%. But our reward system for that is so complex that 2 years down, the farmer will say, forget it, I'm not playing this game. Because the regulation, there's too many consultants, they're making more money than the farmer. I think we need to have a very simple reward system, get it 75% right, give farmers the reward, change in behavior. Farmers take huge risk with climate change, water, pest, disease, commodity prices. Now you're telling him change practices and saying, I'm not going to pay you anything for that. And I believe a very small reward system can give you massive impact, much more than I believe anything EVs can do, or many other incentives the world is rewarding other industrial sectors. A car buyer is much richer than a small farmer in Africa, India, 2 acres, 5 acres. You're expecting him to change, but you don't want to incentivize. So I think it's not only about financial incentive, a reward, recognition by the labeling or whatever. And I believe that the pressure on the agriculture economy to get 100% accurate data in a very volatile world is unfair. And I think we need to create a much more easier system. You don't need to give him millions of dollars. You need to give him 2% more, 1% more. I think you'll see a massive transition. And what we are doing as a corporate is giving them micro insurance if there is a weather impact. He's trying new technology. Can we reward him by instant insurance payment? If there is, in the month of June, he was expecting 100 milliliters of rain, he doesn't get anything, or he gets 300. He loses a lot of fertilizer, the nitration sort of dissipates into the groundwater. He needs to refertilize. So we give him a very small amount of reward. So those are the sort of things which I think we need to do.
Thank you, and thank you for what you're doing. Just to briefly put this in context, for a lot of people don't understand the connection, haven't seen the connection between farming and the climate crisis. There's 3 times as much carbon in the topsoils of the world as in all the trees and vegetation put together, but massive overplowing and techniques that don't respect the integrity of the soil, which is actually the secret to farming, have resulted in the outgassing of all of that carbon. Not until 50 years ago that farming and land conversion was no longer the #1 source of CO2 in the atmosphere. This needs to change, and we'll come back to you. Zhang, you've inspired a lot of people with your large-scale vision of producing carbon-free renewable energy in some of the deserts of the world. How do you see this climate policy recession?
Right. I think it's like a climate policy sentiment. So there's some like swings, but the fundamental physics actually is improving, as you said. The energy storage demand is increasing significantly. Why? Because the price of energy storage has been dropped almost 80% in the last 3 years. So which is enable lots of opportunity for wind and solar to improve a much bigger penetration. So today, my feeling is we are so lucky to have renewable energy to be ready. Why? We are at the doorsteps of great prosperity because of AI. But people underestimate the demand of energy AI can use. AI is going to be the largest energy consumer. Just people cannot figure out before steam engine invent. So people don't know our energy consumption is going to increase 100%, 100 times. So AI will have a similar impact to our energy demand. So then think about, so the boundary for AI is going to the boundary of energy cost. So we need such a long duration, lasting energy foundation for our great prosperity for upcoming years, 50 years, 100 years. Now we see probably we are going to increase 10 times more electricity demand in next 50 years. So we cannot build our house in the moving sand with the finite energy resources from fossil fuel for our great future 100 years coming up. We have to create infinite and inexpensive energy resources, which is renewable energy. It's never depleted, inexpensive. So we are so great. Renewable energy is there. It's much competitive. It's approaching zero marginal cost.
Yeah.
So I feel so lucky.
Yeah, a friend of mine who likes to tell jokes in my home state of Tennessee said, you know, if God had intended us to have limitless, cheap, clean energy, he would have put a giant fusion reactor in the sky.
Yes.
Distributing it everywhere. And an advisor to the king of Saudi Arabia decades ago said to his sovereign, he said, remember, the Stone Age didn't end because of a shortage of stones.
Yes.
It ended because something better came along.
Yes.
So we're very fortunate to have Professor Liz Thurbon from the University of New South Wales. Thank you for making that 27-hour journey here to Davos. And you're an expert on climate policy, and you focus really on Northeast Asia, but also worldwide. So you're an expert. Tell us, what do you feel about this?
Look, I would just echo what my good colleagues have said already, in that there's an enormous good news story to be told. The renewable energy transition isn't just happening, it's irreversible now. And it's irreversible because 2/3 of global investment into energy at the moment is going into clean energy, mostly renewables. And that's because renewables are the cheapest form of electricity in almost every circumstance now. So that's not going to change. That's irreversible. And it's also irreversible because this transition is being driven largely by Chinese investment. And the Chinese government understands something really important. And that is that the energy transition is a massive national security multiplier. It boosts economic security, it boosts energy security, it boosts environmental security, it boosts social security through jobs and geostrategic security. So China's not going to change its path, and so we will see that momentum continue. But there's another reality, which is that we are in a really messy phase of the transition. And that messiness is due largely to poor governance, especially across a lot of Western countries.
Poor governance?
Poor governance.
Do you see any signs of that in the world?
I do. I think that. Let me see. So you raise the point of fossil fuel capture. I think that's a real problem. But also, we're just not ensuring that the fruits of the transition are shared widely enough, and that people understand that there is the benefit. So this is a huge challenge for governments. If we want to rebuild the social and political consensus, we need to make sure that we share the fruits and that this is a story about the energy transition being that massive national security multiplier. That's a message that conservative governments can get behind, I think, as well. So thinking about how we frame the transition and the imperative will go a lot further, a lot faster.
Yeah, and you have China, which you focused on in some of your comments. It's interesting that last year China exported to the rest of the world more green technology by dollar value by 50% more exports of clean technology than all of the exports of fossil fuels from the United States to the rest of the world. They have wisely chosen to invest in an appreciating asset.
They have.
While in the United States, we've chosen to hang on to a depreciating asset because enough of the policymakers in the U.S. are under the thumb of the fossil fuel polluters, and when when they say jump, the politicians say, oh, yes, sir, how high? What can we do?
This is true. And I think, you know, we do hear a lot of arguments about China's overcapacity in renewable products. And it's clear that a lot of companies around the world are struggling to come to terms with China's competitive advantage. But the reality is that from a climate perspective, there is no such thing as overcapacity when it comes to producing renewable energy equipment and to rolling it out as fast as possible. And so in that sense, I mean, China's done an enormous amount to address the climate crisis. China has effectively peaked emissions, it looks like, 6 years ahead of its targets. This is a good news story. That's not to say that there aren't problems. It's not to say that there aren't needs for adaptation and adjustment on behalf of all countries. But this is a story that really needs to be told.
And to focus on the energy security dimension of it, did you have your hand up? Yeah, please, go ahead.
I could build on this because it's amazing what's happening on China on green electricity. But I would like us to look for what's happening also everywhere else.
Yes.
It's not only China.
This is true.
And it's about multiple sources of optionality. Yes, fossil fuels, past maybe less value added, but still present, and they're going to be here for a while. But the ones that they're growing fastest, green electricity from solar, from wind, storage, bio-based solutions. Solutions that come from good carbons, not the carbons under the ground, the carbons that they were from solar capture, but by the plants, biomass, that they are transformed into biofuels, that they decouple the dependency on fossil. And we see India massively moving into this space. It moved from 0 to 5 to 10, 15, 20% of the gasoline demand consumption in India, it's today with bio-based sources. And that's because they realize that they need for national security an alternative, which is not maybe going to be the oil that they're having today as a feedstock, and they want to decouple. That's also because they realize that that generates local jobs.
Right.
It gives an income for the farmers. It gives security of demand. It gives alternative to the volatility of other sources. And it drives local jobs downstream. For every plant you build, there is 3, 4, 5 jobs created upstream and downstream the value chain.
Right.
It's resilience, it's ductility, and it's competitive. And we see it in China, we see it in India, we see it in Brazil, we see Japan moving into bio-based economy, we see it in US too, where biofuels are 10% of the gasoline
We see this
supply.
transition also in places like Pakistan,
Yes.
where the cheap Chinese solar panels are being bought up so quickly. We've seen the addition of off-grid solar to an extent that's more than 50% of what's on the grid. And now this sounds like the punchline in a joke where people walk into a bar, but it's actually true that in most of Pakistan now, a common bride's dowry is 3 panels and an inverter. That's actually happening. We've seen a huge surge of solar installation in Nigeria, in Kenya, in Zambia. Ethiopia has just passed a ban on new internal combustion engine vehicles. Many of these developing countries are now seeing the benefits, and there's a security dimension as well. In Germany, after the sadistic invasion of Ukraine by Russia, one of your officials called the renewable energy freedom energy. Is that still a common view?
He passed the job, but still a common view.
Yeah.
He was a liberal. But it's still a common view, but the one dependency that we had with Russian gas, 60% of our gas come from Russia, is now what the LNG means. It's from US. 92%, the actual figure comes from US. We have pipeline gas from Norway and other European countries too. So we still have a dependency. And for me, in my speeches, when I try to convince MPs or the industry, the trade unions, the people, I argue with independence, resilience and independence. And we are a country that has not many resources, that we have to do a lot of recycling, more than we did until now. And second is produce the energy in Germany with wind, solar, a bit bio, not so much because it's not as efficient as solar is, and I need the soil for nature, for products, for eat, for nutrition and so on. and more forests, to be honest. So I'm a bit on that point.
India gets it.
Yeah, but it's not as efficient as windmills or solar panels, and I don't want to have deforestation in favor of biomass.
Definitely
Just to make that point clear.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to make the point is coming back. Last decade was a discussion about driven by a bit from a moral point of view, which is okay, pathetic. Now I would drive it from a resilient point of view and argue towards, not towards even to our industry that has to change. We can't stay, the Russian times won't come back with cheap gas and products and, from China, and then we sell it to the market, because in the clean tech area, China is getting the market, and they are better. In some battery storage, CATL and so, they're better than the Germans are, and we need more engineering at this point.
Thank you. Jai, you wanted to get into this.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, this, what we were talking about, biofuels, what's happening in India is about 12 million hectares of corn acres. We're producing about 2.5, even less than 2 tons a hectare. But because of the demand and the cash flow the biofuels is creating, we're already up to 3 tons, 3.5 tons. And we believe that 4 or 5 years from now, the same amount of hectares will produce almost 5 tons a hectare. That means we will go from 42 million tons of corn to about 60 to 70 million tons of corn just from the same acres, because we don't believe the weather allows that. So actually, in developing countries, this allows farmers to use better seeds, better technology, because they're seeing the cash flow, and then they want to invest. So while maybe the case in Germany, but I think in other developing countries, the second income source or second buyer, just not food, the fuel buyers are creating investment in technology for farmers, which is driving productivity. And with 1.4 billion people eating more protein, we need agriculture productivity. And food will always get a priority. In case food prices go up, people will always stop biofuels and supply food. So that fear is probably misplaced.
But the role of policy, which we're discussing here, is crucial in agriculture as well. In the U.S., the largest source of government subsidies to farmers is in a program called crop insurance. The title is a bit misleading. But in order to qualify for these subsidies, farmers basically have to assure the government that they are not going to engage in regenerative agriculture, because the incentives have been to produce as much as possible, as quickly as possible, fence row to fence row, instead of taking care of the productivity of the soil and not depleting its vitality. So we need policies that, in recognition of the fact that governments around the world typically do subsidize farming, but don't subsidize them in ways that incentivize them to go in the wrong direction, but incentivize them to go in the right direction. That's your point, isn't it?
Absolutely. And the amount of income which we were spending, maybe $20 billion a year on importing the incremental fuel, will go to small farmers. Now that it'll just help the economy dramatically in terms of investment, cash flows for these farmers.
And the magnitude of this opportunity, the dean of soil scientists around the world, Ratan Lal at Ohio State University, winner of the World Food Prize, he and his colleagues did a peer-reviewed study showing the technical potential for resequestering carbon in topsoils is 156 parts per million, which is basically the entire difference between pre-industrial times and now. The realistic possibility is not that high, but it may be the biggest tool in the toolkit. And I want to come to you again, Lei Zhang. Tell us about your idea in the Gobi Desert. Technically, the expansive view is you could actually provide renewable electricity to all of Asia from solar and wind and batteries from the Gobi Desert. Is that your vision?
Yes, more than providing green electricity is providing green molecules. The matching the productivity of soil actually is limited by the fertilizer. So then we are creating green fertilizer, actually it's green ammonia in the Gobi Desert. Then this could be shipped to India around the world, not only electricity. And today, what we are achieving cost parity for green ammonia with gray. So this is, I think, a truly breakthrough. We are building the largest green ammonia project, 1.5 million ton, in the Gobi Desert, with 100% renewable energy, mainly wind, plus some time of solar storage, and with electrolyzer, ammonia synthesis, with AI orchestration. So this is going to be a new phenomenon. We think we are going to turn the Gobi Desert into the big green oil field. And this green oil is going to, from Sahara, from Australia desert, in the Mongolia Gobi, shipping the green oil around the world. And our next phase, by 2028, we are going to make the green ammonia 10% below the gray. So we believe the Gobi is not a place useless, it's a place of a new abundance. So
it's an inspiring vision, and we've seen some business leaders in Australia offer the same kind of idea from the Northern Territories, where massive solar fields are being installed in order to ship green electrons up to Singapore and then to Southeast Asia. This is a realistic possibility?
Look, there are so many realistic possibilities in Australia that it's kind of mind-blowing. You know, if you think about just one aspect, at the moment, Australia, you know, we're one of the world's largest fossil fuel exporters. We also export a lot of iron ore, which is used in really dirty manufacturing. And iron ore is our largest export. But if we actually process the iron ore onshore using renewable energy, we can triple the value of our existing iron ore exports by exporting green iron.
Your largest iron miner, Andrew Forrest, is one of the leading advocates of this energy transition.
He is, absolutely. But, you know, there's a real challenge for Australia because, you know, we're not China and we're not the States. You know, we can't afford the $1 trillion subsidies and the expenditures for the government. So our government needs to be really smart in its statecraft, in its green energy statecraft. The question for a lot of us middle powers is, how do we get the government using taxpayer funds in as effective and efficient way as possible? So, for example, with green iron, the biggest obstacle facing green iron producers at the moment is lack of demand, bankable demand, basically. There's a green premium on green iron at the moment. So in Australia, we're looking at using the government's creditworthiness as an off-taker to issue demand contracts for green iron. And then that just the commitment from the government allows the producer then to raise funds at a really good rate for their project. And then you say, well, what, oh, you don't want the government then lumped with all this expensive green iron. So the idea is that you would then separate the green iron from its environmental attributes, sell the iron into regular markets at regular prices without the green premium, and then you can create a clean commodity certificate with the environmental attribute that you can sell. And then the government actually earns the money back for supporting industry. So I think these kinds of really clever, targeted interventions that are middle power appropriate, you know, smaller government appropriate, are really, really vital.
But we haven't seen a shift in this policy, partly because of what you labeled poor governance in many places around the world. And many advocates are saying the single biggest change in climate policy that would help matters is to stop subsidizing fossil fuels at the massive amounts that they're subsidized now. It is absurd that taxpayers around the world are being forced to subsidize the destruction of humanity's future. If we just got rid of all the subsidies for fossil fuels, we'd be better off. You agree, don't you?
I absolutely agree. I agree 100%. But this speaks back to the problem of governance. And, you know, we can't just govern the energy transition to boost energy security or economic security or environmental security.
Or job creation.
Or job creation. We have to have an integrated approach to governance. governance. We call that green energy statecraft. To think cleverly about how you boost all of those securities simultaneously. It's a huge challenge, but it's a massive opportunity.
So I'm going to open it up to questions from our audience here in just a moment. But before I do that, I want to go around one more time briefly with short comments. Based on what you've heard, what else would you like to add? Minister?
What I want to hear? I disagree. I want to make one point here, that not everything that is green is good. And I disagree with you on the farming sector. And the policy in Germany is a different one. We tax fossil fuel. If you use with CO2, and we are rising prices on gas and oil. And the farming, I need the farmers to reinvent peatlands. I need the peatlands for storage carbon. And I need the nutrition of a rising world, more people to feed the world and not to feed the tanks. So I'm totally clear on that point. Green farming, I'm not a friend of that. I don't want to have incentive. I want to have incentives for farmers who storage CO2, for instance, with peatlands and to keep the water in the area. So
we talked about this, Jai and I did yesterday or day before yesterday. I actually favor incentives for farmers based on the storage of carbon in the soil and better monitoring and assessment. Michigan State University has what they call a multi-model ensemble, Bruno Basso and others. You say that's difficult, and you want to subsidize behavior change instead of carbon storage. So there is a disagreement here. You want to respond?
Yeah, I think, Minister, I completely agree. In Germany, where farmer productivity is very high, farmers are wealthy, the yields are close to the yield potential of the seed and the soil. But in India, where yield potential is 10 tons a hectare, farmers are producing 2.5 tons a hectare. What drives that incentive is offtake. The problem in Africa, small farmers in a landlocked country, the minute they produce 10 tons, they sell everything. The minute they produce 20 tons, the prices collapse because there's no buyer. So when you have a secondary buyer for the grain, for an alternative use, which is actually these countries are spending billions of dollars importing fuel. Now this cash flow will go to the farmer. They can adopt, use better technology and use better, you can start now saying, why don't you follow no-till? Why don't you focus on soil carbon, because it actually helps you with your yield. So I think, I don't disagree with you that Germany may be not the issue, but globally it's very important to incentivize farmers to produce more from the same land. Can you imagine if you produce 10 tons of grain versus 2.5 tons, the amount of deforestation which you are saving? Because if you had to produce the same amount of grain to feed 1.4 billion people in India or Africa, you would deforest the rest of the land just to feed them. And nobody is going to start doing intermittent fasting and stop eating.
Esther, you wanted to jump into this.
I would like to bring in the thought of the power of the end.
The power of the
end. Adding, it's more than just one option. It's a continuum, and it is looking at how we can complement and overlap. And please here don't forget the amazing advancements on science and on technology, leading to competitive solutions and leading to stigmas of the past that we have broken through technology. Today, and here I embrace the job of the business and the companies to bring that voice stronger and louder. The dilemma you're raising up, today, it's not food versus full. It's feed, food, and full together. When you look at capturing the precious products from the farmers and then bringing bioethanol, there are byproducts from this bioethanol, thanks to technology, thanks to the yeast and to the enzymes that we develop, and the work with also engineering on scaling up, that today, you can extract the DDGs on value-added solutions for feeding cows. So suddenly, it's not anymore from corn to bioethanol. It is bioethanol and DDGs for protein. And you can decrease your imports, that Europe does too, of DDGs into the region. And this is what many, many countries see. They see we driving local jobs, we bringing decoupling, we enabling fuel, we enabling national security, we enabling fit. And with the right policies, that harmony is in place. And here's where we, I think, businesses, we don't do a good job.
Okay.
On speaking up and on showing what technology, science, competitiveness allows today, and how we can decouple the stigmas of the past.
We're about to run out of time, and I want to go to the audience. Anybody have a question here? Himanshu Gupta, Climate AI.
Thank you, sir. I want to go back.
Hold the mic closer. Go ahead.
I want to go back to the initial question that the Vice President raised. How do we avert, or how do we prevent this policy recession from spreading around the world? Especially in times where most of the governments are dealing with budget deficits, and there are competing priorities, for example, spending on defense.
Professor, you're the expert in government policies on this matter around the world. What do you say to this?
Give me the easy question. Look, I think this is an excellent question, and it really speaks to the absolute urgency to build a social and political consensus for the transition. And the key to that is to make this an equitable transition from the outset. At the moment, we have a transition that's accelerating, but it's not an equitable transition. People aren't seeing the benefits in their everyday lives, or too many people aren't seeing the benefits in their everyday lives. There are huge risks, I would agree with the Minister. Renewables depend a lot on extractive industries for their inputs. We have a risk of replicating a whole nother era of dangerous extractivism. We need to bake in the social benefits from the outset. We need to be looking at community ownership of renewable energy. We need to be looking at Indigenous ownership of renewable energy. We need to be looking at energy affordability. And only that way can we keep that consensus for the transition and ensure that we move ahead as quickly as we need to address the climate crisis.
Same question, Lei.
Yeah, I would take this opportunity to question to correct some misunderstanding on the large-scale Chinese renewable products. So actually, that's the solution for your question. If you think about Chinese renewable products, it is the productivity tools for you to build energy foundation. Then you are able to build a much competitive artificial intelligence training, much good valuable products manufacturing. Just imagine, in Industrial Revolution, if some country offer you steam engine at a very low price, you are able to build a fantastic industrial system foundation. Then you are able to open so many factories. So Chinese renewable products is kind of misunderstood.
Yeah.
It's so cost competitive. They are not making too much money on that. Actually, very thin margin. They are subsidized the global energy transition. So that's my view. So we are so lucky to have China provide such great products, which in past 20 years, we see such 90% cost reduction. Without such products, we don't have time to discuss about energy transition, to be honest.
Yeah, good point.
May I ask, because
quickly.
I think it's a perfect political question you ask. And I come back to my statement from the beginning. It's a distributional question. The question you raised were right. I mean, we have these expenditures for defense. Germany has to invest more in defense, of course. And on the other hand, for the energy transition. And then you have, our choice is to subsidize now the lower incomes and have a pricing and subsidize not the bigger incomes or higher incomes, and we have a pricing for oil and gas and CO2. This is the European way. I hope we can stay on that because we have this ETS2. We postponed it for a year because of the election in Poland. And the question, if we will succeed, will be if we can introduce it for a reasonable and affordable price for normal people.
So I regret to say we're out of time. We're close. This has been a fantastic discussion. Thank you all so much for participating. We have everything we need to solve this climate crisis. Some doubt we have sufficient political will. But I'll close by reminding everyone political will is itself a renewable resource. Thank you all for